Welcome to the first reading group session of Mazzola's Topos of Music. We're going to be discussing this book somewhat indefinitely. We'll see how much of it we get through and that kind of thing. This first session is going to be facilitated by Zach Davis. I think some future sessions will be facilitated by other people, including Giancarlo Sandoval and some other people as well. So I think we're just going to start off with some introductions. And we'll just kind of go around the group, and each person can kind of introduce themselves. And maybe we can start with Zach, since he's starting the facilitating today.
Okay. What's up? Zach Davis. I'm an improviser from New York. My interest in music kind of spans the whole gamut. That's about it. I'm really excited to read all this with you guys.
And you've worked with. Can you tell us like what your background is in like music?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right now, currently, I'm working for the Mellon Foundation, which is Vermont Young and Daring Disease thing. I've played in improvised bands for the last 10 to 15 years. Before that, I spent a while playing more forward stuff, but I have been playing music since I was very young, as well as into improvised music and stranger music the whole time. It's taking me a while to second.
Okay, great. And I'll just say a little bit about myself, and then we can go around. My name is Jason Adams, and I'm one of the organizers of the New Center. My background in music is mostly as a consumer and just somebody who listens to as much as possible from as wide of a range as possible. I've written some things. I wrote a piece on the significance of Michael Jackson that was published in.
Very good.
Oh, thank you. Which was published.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Cool. Which was published in the book Deleuze and Race. I interviewed the band Battles for Pop Matters, and kind of framed that around Walter Benjamin and some other theorists. And I have a chapter of my dissertation which is on the emergence of rock music and the relationship between kind of rock music and race politics, more or less. So that's kind of my background, and my interest is not really formal theory per se. It's much more music, culture, and power. So kind of a cultural studies approach.
Yeah, I should have said something about that, or to that effect too. I have kind of the same thing.
Okay.
I'm interested in power relations through music for sure.
Cool. And maybe we can just go from the left to the right. Start with Alex.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Alex. Have a lot in common with Zach, oddly enough. I'm an improviser from Philly. I live with Quinn Doherty, who's also a frequent listener here in these hangouts. Guitar player, percussionist, and generally just interested in just like the lives of sound in general and communication, and also through my studies with Quinn, power relations as well. But kind of just hopping between a lot of different scenes here in Philly, like the neo-soul hip-hop thing here to sometimes the straight-ahead stuff to working with like some of the more like timbre-based improvisers here. But yeah, just sort of working through things, and I'm an absorber for sure, essentially, so that's what I'm here for.
Evan?
Okay, yeah, I couldn't see what's left to right for you. So but in any case, I'm Avon Kang. I'm a musician. I'm in Seattle, Washington. I play viola and violin, among other instruments, professionally, and I've been doing that for about 20 years. And before that, I studied, well, actually before and during I've studied, European classical music, jazz music, North Indian classical music, and Persian music, Persian classical music, and yeah, trying to synthesize those perspectives. I'm also interested in philosophy and quite a bit of psychology also, and critical theory and things like that. So, and mathematics, obviously. So this book that we're about to embark on reading has been something that I've been interested in for several years, but to do it in a group context is the best.
Great. Harry?
I'm Harry. I'm also known as Liev on Facebook. I'm a physician, occupational environmental medicine, work in northern Nevada. A lot of my work involves hearing conservation in industrial workers. A lot of my fascination with this is based on inner ear dynamics, as well as the mathematics behind that, and the mathematics of music, my own musical interests. What I do is I am interested more in vocal, so I do Gregorian chant as well as Byzantine chant. I'm presently studying Byzantine chant in the Byzantine notation, learning the scales and modes of Byzantine chant. I also play guitar. I have some synthesizers. Back in the day, I used to DJ on vinyl. My consumer musical interests are largely electronic music, more trance type music, but also post-black metal type music, like the band Alcest. Who was that?
Big fan. Sorry.
Yeah. Alcest. I've been listening to a lot of Alcest lately. Philosophically, into a lot of the Badiouvian exposition of category theory. I guess that's pretty much it.
Okay. James Harris, are you able to? Or he's not able to, right?
Yeah, he has no mic.
Yeah. Well, James, if you wouldn't mind typing something out, one of us can read it out loud. In the meanwhile, maybe we can have Jessica.
Sure. My name's Jessica Kinney. I'm a composer and singer, and I do a lot of work with classical Persian music, translating poetry.
Cool.
So, yeah, anyway, for me it's like pretty distracting to have like this, the conversation going on the right and then try to talk.
Sorry.
So, yeah, but right now, getting involved in these kind of conversations is really exciting to me because my point of view has more been involved in traditional music, but at the same time, my context is really improvised music, and I grew up in the punk scene, and being involved in kind of living, street art, performance art, and that kind of realm, but wanting to, develop this kind of self-cultivation approach to music and thinking that really has actually its goal for me would be a mystical goal, but I really believe that that reason is an element of that process. So I want to just really expand some things about my way of thinking to move closer to a spiritual core actually in the music that I'm involved in. So, and I live in Seattle, and I'm married to Avend, and we do a lot of collaborating, composing and improvising and all kinds of things. So, but I'm just really interested to find out how people think about these things, and really excited to get exposed to something like Mazzola, and I feel like having a certain type of mind which picks up on these mathematical ideas more as images than as really processes. So I'm excited to kind of break that down and actually get involved with the processes and understanding on that level. Thanks.
Great. Woo! So we have a we have a description here from James Harris. He says, just make a really loud doomy drony sound for like 20 minutes. That's how you will know.
No, you probably want one that's not enjoyable.
Okay, so Martin Rosenberg.
Oh, well, I'm a scholar and a writer, and again, a practicing musician. I'm a historian of the concept of emergence, or self-organization, from its beginning to pop into mainstream scientific thinking at the turn of the 19th century to the 20th century, in the figures of Poincaré, Bergson, and Duchamp, and I follow it all the way up to Prigogine and Deleuze and Guattari, Prigogine in physics and chemistry, and then also with the cognitive revolution looking at manifestations of emergence in cognitive and computer science and artificial intelligence. But I'm mainly interested in the question of the relationship between embodied and distributed cognition. I was originally trained for a few years at the Berklee College of Music in the early to mid-'70s and tried to make a living at it for about 4 years. I am a composer. I've written back then about 3 dozen jazz tunes, and I'm now working through them to see if any of them have survived the test of time. I'm performing now 3 days a week, but I had quit for 30 years, and it took me about 4 years of playing an hour to 2 hours a day to get myself at least back up to speed where I can sit in and actually play with other people here in town, and that's what I'm doing now, and I'm very anxious to be completely back up to speed. And I am writing again. I've written a couple of tunes over the last, but my current research project is about jazz and cognition, and about the relationship between embodiment and distributed cognition, thinking through that using jazz as a thought experiment to ask the question of whether it's possible for human beings to be both embodied and distributed at the same time.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Zach so that you can give us kind of an overview of what we're going to do today.
100%.
Go ahead.
You guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, so I take my headphones off because I'm getting a feedback when I talk. So I'm just going to go for a minute. And if someone says something, I guess type and tell me to shut up. Anyway, I think one thing I realized from everyone's introduction, basically besides Martin, who is on the next level anyway, you know, doing some pretty serious stuff, it seems like we all at least somewhat have roots in, I guess you could say, not specifically punk or hardcore community or anything like that, but one thing DIY, we all have, not all of us, we all seem to come from some sort of thing like that, you know, and as well, I think we are all think we all study a similar group of thinkers. At least I know we are all pretty sure all of us are familiar with, Deleuze, Guattari, that kind of thing, and I'm pretty sure most people mentioned things that came up to me while reading the text as well, especially the thing Jessica said. I felt like she might have stole my notes. I was thinking earlier specifically about rational mysticism or mystical realism, whatever you would want to call it, and not in the way that is defined in literature at all, but just the idea of mysticism and rationalism not being mutually exclusive at all. In fact, they do often work together, and it often produces very sublime results. I happen to think so. And yes, it's something I'm going for as well, and I think that's something that Mazzola does very well in all his texts. I think that he goes back and forth between these two poles very well. This is something I've never talked to him about, but I feel like he's a bit conflicted with it himself, but he does work with it because it's reality. It's both sides of the picture, and he's pretty deeply involved in both. Now, one thing I just wanted to say, it goes back on in a second, because I'm going to want some comments at this. Basically, I was thinking, since this whole book is a musical, whatever. It is a reading of music through category theory, basically. And category theory can very simply be defined as using concepts that have somewhat germinated in mathematics or come from mathematics to describe basically every other part of reality. And I guess that's maybe dumbing it down somewhat, but how do I want to say this? I was thinking about, in relation to the topic of the whole book, and with I just written down. Sorry, guys, 1 second. My notes are out of order.
No problem.
Well, the fact that category theory is always dealing with multiple disciplines at once. It kind of has to, by definition, because it is an investigation, and normally it's something outside of mathematics. Via mathematics is always extremely cross-disciplinary. So basically, this may seem a very simple explanation of this, but the way I kind of think about it, it's okay. So with Mazzola looking at compositions and thinking of things like something simple like tonism or frequency. How would I say this? So he's looking at these and knowing number very well, being a computer scientist, physicist. First and foremost, he always seems to introduce himself as that, and then usually mathematician or improviser after. He stands in this zone where I feel like he believes in some sort of numerical reality. He feels number has grounding that is, obviously it's not mere signification, it's not representation. There is something deeper than number itself. However, this doesn't translate into meaning that number has fixed meaning. You know, in different systems, it could easily mean something different. You know, for example, in different tuning systems, frequency numbers relate differently. I'm sure in different systems, colors, gradients relate differently. But anyway, to wrap my whole rambling thing up, when reading this, and you know, my last 2 years in general or so, where I've been actually learning what category theory is and applying it to music and things like that, it's really gotten me to take a look around kind of at everything and realize, you know, category theory and number theory too, because number theory is a big interest of mine, but the number being the basis of everything, and almost just trying to look at everything not as a numerical representation, but think about what would this be if everything is pure number. Yeah, and I don't really know exactly where I'm going with that, but that was what I wanted to start out with for some reason. But anyway, did that make any sense? Or
For Zach to know how you're reacting, you'll have to unmute yourselves.
oh, okay.
All the way up. That's what I say. Ivan happened to mention polemics earlier before you got here, which I think is super interesting, and I think that's also super present. And I think that, like, you know, part of we were just talking very briefly about how I think part of the draw of this book is somehow what Mazzola is radiating is this understanding that there is a polemic there, and has somehow found ways of being so goddamn profound on both ends of the spectrum, and you know, so I think it's a great place to start. I'm with you. I'm ready.
Okay, so I guess the second thing I wanted to say was the preface basically just kind of lays out the book in general. You know, I don't think, does anyone think we really need to dive into the preface at all? It really just kind of tells you what we're going to be looking at, and he kind of just basically lists the chapters again and gives you a sentence on what each one's going to be about. I think, you know, the nut should be cracked more around chapter 1. Yeah. Is everyone with me here? Anyway.
What do people think? Do you want to discuss the preface, or just dive into chapter 1?
Because if anyone has any questions, we can go there. If anyone's stuck on anything, I think we should try to iron any of that.
The preface being like the bit where he's explaining like the differences between like the volumes and stuff, like versions of it prior, like the one that comes directly before the actual. Like, we're not talking about. Hold on, I'm trying to pull it up here.
We're talking about the one that starts with the con.
Yeah. I'm personally fine with that.
Okay.
But we should definitely. Anybody else?
All right. So basically, chapter 1, you know, this whole "what is music about" thing, and musical ontology and stuff like that. I had a couple ways I wanted to start this. Would everyone kind of want to go around and say what you think either musical ontology or just the meaning of music in general is to you? Because it's a very vague concept, and it's something I was thinking about a lot this morning. And you know, Mazzola is so all over the place himself that he kind of, you know, just gives you ideas and stuff to pick at. So I'd kind of be interested in hearing everyone, just, you know, if they wanted to at all, what you think of when you hear musical ontology or being of music, or
musical being, because to think of the piece of music and its being is it's a strange zone. Anyone want to say anything?
This is Avon. I was. It's actually comes from another reading somewhere which I no longer remember the source of, but it was a provisional definition of music that says music is whatever is regarded as music.
Age?
It was. I appreciated that. I appreciated that because it sets up a space to discuss, a definition of music without really, without actually defining the content in any way. But also, I think it leaves it open who and what is defining the music in a certain way. And I realize that's very different from where Mazzola goes in his book, but I just thought I would put that out there at the outset.
I want to say too, it's actually kind of similar too to where he's going, just because the whole idea of a topos of music. You kind of just nailed exactly what that is. So yeah, it's sort of. I'm not sure if what you quoted was cage. Maybe it just sounds like a caging thing to me. But without that I guess is the how music becomes embodied or the space or something like that. But I like what you said, because it leaves the content open, but in a way it just provides you with a form. However, a form still completely malleable or fluid form that we can build with or mess around with or whatever. So, anyone else?
Oh boy.
Okay, if not, we can just move on to the next thing.
It's such a great question, but it's so challenging. But I want to say something because
it's getting me all day.
It's just great opportunity to share, and I'm hoping more people will give their short, like the condensed version of how you conceive of this. But for me, I feel like musical ontology it's almost like it's like another sense, maybe. So if the sense of hearing is like the physics of sound, something, or the acoustics of sound, that musical ontology is like another level of perception that integrates our experience of time, gravity, space, our emotions. Like, there should be a name for this. There should just be another. I don't know. That's all I can think of at the moment.
Yeah, I think that was really on point. At first when I started thinking about it earlier, I was like, well, music ontology, I don't know, maybe it would just be vibration. But then I think that would, it's kind of pointless, because then, well, what is vibration? It comes down to it. And that's kind of the point of number theory, and I know that it's not remotely the point of category theory, but I think with the number theory and working within Lamont's system frequently and always thinking about primes and things like that, the number theory and the whole vibration and leading back to it kind of, always clouds my view on music. But
vibration is a great.
Thinking about it a little bit more. I saw it as not just do agree with Ivan, and that was a beautiful quote. You know, that music is about the space, or the space where music may be gone, or however he said it. It was much more elegant than anything I can say right now. I'm sorry, I'm about 46 hours awake. I've been moving and working for 3 days straight, and so I'm a bit loose right now. But yeah, it's musical ontology. I do feel like in the best music, there's always epistemology involved as well, because there's some sort of knowledge production or knowledge trading or even skepticism. For example, I always have to say that the best critics today are musicians themselves. Personally, I kind of consider one of the reasons I make music to be a critic. Why write of that's one thing. If you don't like something in music, why complain about it? Try to not do it, and maybe do the other stuff around it, and show why certain things aren't necessary or whatever. I think that was through a lot of improvisation that I got to that point. But yeah, just the whole idea of being a music. Vibration would definitely be a component of the complete ontology. It has to be, but I feel like like Jessica said, it does lead to something that is a little more abstract or mystical and can't necessarily be named, which is always the thing that us people who read philosophy, it drives us up the wall, but we love it too. So if anyone else wants to jump in and say anything, I'm going to go to the whole theory and perception, communication, that type of stuff.
I just would like to interject one thing.
Sure.
We began before the actual recording discussing a little bit of the context of the putting together of music and mathematics, and the way that Mazzola seems to be offering a way of applying higher mathematics to analyzing the semiotic system of music. And there are different theories of signs. And some of you may know the distinction between Saussure and Peirce. For example, Saussure talks about long parole and talks about the sign and its significance. But Peirce insists that there is a third element, and that third element is the speaker, the person who generates and audits the sign, and that you cannot understand the sign except in relationship with that which is engaged in utterance or auditing the utterance. And that third term, I think, is a really important way to understand what Jessica, is that your name? Jessica was trying to get at. And it's through the ambiguity here about what is the nature of the semiotic system that he's trying to describe that makes us wonder whether we can analyze music and in other words, to ask the question of ontology independent of the human beings that create music and listen to music. Does it have an existence independent of the creators and auditors of it? And so that's bringing that theoretical problem, the tension between Saussure and Peirce, might provide a way to frame, the adequacy or inadequacy of our understanding of what Mazzola might mean as music, the ontology of music as a semiotic system. Because that seems to be the implication, that he's saying that music is a semiotic system, and that's its ontological grounds.
I agree with everything you said. until the last sentence, I think personally, or what I get out of it is that music isn't just the semiotic system. Semiotics is an integral part of the structure of musical ontology. Would you agree?
Well, I only introduced that just to frame the question slightly. As I mentioned earlier, I'm at a disadvantage here because I haven't read Mazzola at all, and I'm waiving access to the text. But I was responding to the ways that people were questioning that, and I thought that distinction between Saussure and Peirce and understanding the ontology of signs might be useful at this particular moment.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on, and I think number one, Peirce is one of Mazzola's biggest influences. I didn't actually think of the tension between the Saussurian system and the Peircean system at all, and I definitely didn't think about that. The whole thing of in Peirce's system there is the speaker, there's the third, and yeah, that is very important. I think Peirce in general is a great help for any Mazzola or reading this type of stuff. Peirce will help you through life. He'll help you with everything. I'm always reading Peirce. You've got endless stuff that kind of. He was a polymath, so I would say he writes about everything. But yeah, he even he gets into some Peircean stuff in this later. But yeah, I think that's funny when you said you haven't read Mazzola yet. I thought you were commenting actually on the thing he was saying later when he gets into semiotics as being or the semiotic as being I think one of the four fundamental scientific domains that make up music. Yeah. So anyway, let's get on to this the 1.1 fundamental activities.
If I could just interrupt just for 1 second, I'm going to have to leave at this moment. I'm very interested in this reading group, and I will have to beg off because I didn't realize how long this was going to take, and I've got some other things going on, and so I'm going to have to bow out at this moment, but I hope I will be welcome to come back. Is this going to meet on Saturday o'clock from now on?
Well, let's leave that to Jason. But would anyone want to meet in a day or two, since this session was a little botched?
Well, for the next 2 days, I have to take my daughter to visit a college because she's got to make a major decision at this moment. So I'll actually be out of town for 2 days. And I will be back on Tuesday. But I do have to leave right now. Thank you for allowing me to participate, even though I haven't done the reading yet. And I hope that I'll be able to play catch up, and I hope that I'll be welcome to come back. And it's been really great getting to know all of you. So thanks a lot, folks. And I hope to interact with you more in the future.
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah. Take care.
Martin.
Thanks, Martin. Anyway, yeah, it would be. Yeah, it probably still will be Saturdays at 6, unless for some reason that's not working for a lot of people, and we can figure out the detail on that.
Okay, cool. Everyone ready for 1.1?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So, math is something that I've always been interested in, but it's definitely not my strongest. So I don't really understand why this has to be a tetrahedron in this order. But maybe someone could help me with that in a second. But everything else I think I got. Anyway, Mazzola, specifically brings up here that there's 4 fundamental activities involved in music. And this, how do you say this? This supports, the musical, the methodology, epistemology, ontology. If you have musical eschatology, I'm sure I got black metal musicians do, whatever, you know, whatever you're doing with music, this is going to apply to it. So the four zones he's talking about would be production, perception, communication, and documentation. Now, what he says is that, you know, to develop a conscious in music, we should select all these subjects, and he says, you know, there's a strong connection between artistic activity and intellectual reflection. You know, the arts and sciences, this can be an exotic aspect, but musicology is always forced to deal with it, which makes it a pretty special case. I'd have to agree with him there. Musicology is one field. Actually, to sidetrack for a second, I always think it's funny how much in the academy, how quickly people look to music and say, like, you know, boom, no, we're not going there. That's, you know, pop culture or whatever. Even if you're talking about, you know, the most dry academic, whatever, a lot of people think music is, you know, an action movie, or, you know, whatever. And nothing against action movies. I watch too many of them. But you know, it's, as he's saying here, you know, musicology, it's a rather strange field because it is a field, but it actually embodies all these other fields at the same time as well, and it is forced to deal with. So it's, as I said, that word I think is important to point out. Forced to deal with many things that other disciplines aren't, just because of the variances that go into everything you do with music. And I think I'm just going to pick up for this next part. Let's dive into a little bit about production. You know, production, I guess you said, you know, to recognize, you know, making music on any level of reality. Maybe it's on an instrument, software, even, you know, composition that's not played yet, improvisation. But, you know, Mazzola claims, and it's something I've actually argued with him about, and we kind of came to an agreement, but he claims that you cannot make an analysis during production, which I thought was a very strange thing for an improviser to say. To him, he says that the production always comes first, and the analysis is a somewhat immediate effect. I don't know if I necessarily agree at all, especially in the fact that this is another thing we tend to argue about, that many gestures, especially in improvisation, have no embodiment. I mean, they have come from embodiment, or they may result in embodiment, but many of the gestures involved in improvisation, especially when you're dealing with people that you have been in an improvisational topology with for a long amount of time. I mean, I always use the sex metaphor, not to be creepy or anything, but it is very similar. You know, it's, you know, all these micro ticks and things like that, and it's, you know, improvisation is different than composition, and it's also radically different than just going out there and vomiting up a bunch of sound. Improvisation, to me, there's more of a duality. There's more than a duality of production and analysis going on at once. I think Alex, to note on the side, actually deals with this a bit too, and what Marin was saying with the third term with purse. I think these are all something that are embodied at once during an improvisation, during the production. To me, the analysis can come before. The analysis of improvisation, it doesn't have to happen any time, or it doesn't have to even be related to the space-time of the improvisation, really. The analysis could come weeks before. It can come weeks after. It could come right at it or after it. I mean, improvisation is a pretty strange thing to take part in, strange thing to discuss. But before I move on to reception, and since I'm at Kinko's and it's costing me $20 an hour, I gotta go buy another card in a minute. But anyone want to say anything about the production and analysis thing, or?
Yeah, I would like to say something which is production. For me, is not a useful term to deal with the imagination, even though he later compared it with Bacon's imagination and arts category. I think that production, the product, unless you were to understand product in a different sense, in maybe a category theory sense, as a product, between 2 points, or however you would say that. But in like the Marxian sense, it leaves little room for passive imagination or listening to a sound that is not produced, externally, perceptively. That's my only caveat with this formulation, with this tetrahedron right here.
I gotta agree 100% with everything you said, unless the term production is using it in like a category theoretical sense, where since category theory takes terms from all over mathematics and philosophy and bastardizes them and completely changes their meaning. So you're reading something and you think you understand it, and then a simple term like, I don't know, a wall, I mean something else, I don't know. But category theory, that's what it does. So unless you're using this term production to actually either mean a product mathematically, or some sort of product that has an abstract definition within category theory, I think kind of nailed that. Why is that in production? Exactly. You know what I mean? Because production, like you said, in the Marxian sense, or even in like you could go earlier, in like Adam Smith style sense, you're getting the product here, and a lot of musicians don't make a product. A lot of musicians, I would say my boss, Lamont, he's the shit that he might be as, next to Cage, the two of them are probably the two giants of 20th century composition, and there's only been 4 or 5 products ever made, with Lamont's music, yet his influence is, pretty rhizomatic. So I think that was a very important thing you pointed out, man, and I don't know, I didn't pick up on that one before at all on the term product. So yeah, that was really good. Do you guys mind giving me 2 minutes so I can go buy another card? Sorry about this.
Do what you have to do.
I just walked away for just a second. Did Zach go to get another card?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Because I was going to say, I mean, if he can hear us and we can hear him, he doesn't necessarily need to be in the Hangout per se, because we're connecting him through the cell phone.
Oh, really? That's what it is?
Mm-hmm. But
I think you would have heard that.
Yeah. Maybe he's listening through the computer or something.
So is using the term production, I feel like Mazzola must be trying to connect something that's not normally connected in music to other sciences and other philosophical formats. I mean, I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt, because I also wouldn't want to sacrifice terms like creativity, inspiration, imagination, things that they're too loose as terms, and it's really difficult to nail down or to go more deeply into what those things actually are, to have a discursive, a discursive space for the question, what is creativity? Maybe if you use a term like production, then the analogy between different methodologies becomes more accessible, and I'm willing to just take that leap of faith, even though at first, like, production to me sounds fascistic and, like a difficult choice, a huge a huge sacrifice. So it's just like a yeah, just like benefit of the doubt. Okay, this is going somewhere. I really want to understand, you know, like where we were, like Zach was bringing up earlier, like number as the basis of reality. What happens if you really follow through with this concept? How far can you go? So is production as a term, I mean, maybe it's not that important. Maybe he's just using, you know, just trying to break more. He's trying to break this idea of music into 4 categories, and the names of those categories are a bit arbitrary. Like, it's more he wants to actually have us visualize a tetrahedron than he actually wants us to contemplate the essence of what is production, but that he wants us to see this space where these different dynamics can occur, dynamic relationships can occur between different things, but what they are as fixed concepts is not necessarily the point. I don't know. That's
Mazzola is also taking a leap, or he's also you're getting onto something that I think he's very conscious of. The very end of chapter 1, he goes, there's the sentence in here. He says, "We do, however, not overdress this elegant configuration as a magic, quote, magic, unquote, tetrahedron. The visualization merely serves as a concise and relatively well-positioned synopsis of the overall situation, where the question, what is music about, can be initiated. Where the question can be initiated, where we can begin from." So he's leaping too.
Right, right.
So I don't think he means them to be terminal, the tetrahedron. He's really like, this is our place. This is like the space that we're like, you know, sort of. He's taken absorbed some information and run some simulations in his head, and he goes, okay, like here's a framework that we can really make, perhaps like not how can we go, but we can go.
Yeah, we can work with it.
Right. Which I think is awesome that someone like Mazzola, on like a empirical number sense, right, like you're bringing up this thing about numbers, can like be okay with saying this, like, yeah, this tetrahedron, which I like have thought about for like 15 years, like magic. it's like. Yeah. That's a really amazing thing. So I think he would probably, I would love to hear what he would have to say about our critiques of. I mean, we haven't even, not even touching numbers yet. This is like an ethical framework or something. This is like just a framework, and we're already parsing out, you know, possible flaws in the planes that he set up here in the diagram. But yeah, just thought that was important. Magic tetrahedron.
Whoops. Am I on mute? Yeah, I think it's not a strong objection or anything. I totally accept the framework that he sets out of great interest for what he's about to go into. But I do want to reserve a space for an unheard sound and an imagined sound. Yeah. So I think, but it's interesting with the geometric model, with the tetrahedron or whatever shape, you can always kind of add to it or sort of sculpt it. So it's very useful, and it's very robust the way he sets it up, and I appreciate that. So are we ready to go on, or is Zach still out there?
Are you back now, Zach?
Okay, apparently not.
Where would you put the unheard sound in the image of a tetrahedron with these 4? I'm just now jumping ahead, but where would you place, if you're reserving a space? Is it inside these kind of?
Actually, the space. Yeah, I think we just did it by calling product, which actually Reza did this in his seminar. He took the word product and he explained that it was a product in the sense of this. Is it Gassman? Grassman was a student of Kant. That I didn't get that reference, but it was, yeah, basically like a product, like we would have a sum or a product. That for me that holds that space right in it for in terms of sound production. You know, sound as a product of what? What's the substance of it? It could be physical substance, and it could be not physical.
So the idea that the heard sound is a product of the unheard sound and something else.
That's nice. That's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah, maybe so. Jason, did you know that reference of is it Grassman or
student of Kant? No, that's not familiar to me. It actually, the name sounds a little familiar.
Oh, yeah, that is Grassman.
Is it Grassman?
Shadow about that. Yeah, in a Sake of the Mobile.
Okay.
Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, I want to follow up on that research-wise for sure. But I think that the weird analogy that he made to Bacon just a little bit later, imagination and arts.
Yep.
That's, I mean,
the counterpoint of production.
Yeah, exactly. It's in there. So I'm just looking for that in the text right now.
I actually have it right in front of me. He says, if we compare these entities to the musical activities, and he's talking about in Bacon, reason and philosophy, documentation, history, and the imagination and the art. And it will correspond as follows. Imagination and art is the counterpoint of production. The arts express the creative activity of making a work from one's imagination. So I guess he sees I guess he's using the term product rather loosely, and maybe in a non-Marxian sense, and just the idea that whatever, he is a mathematician. Maybe he's thinking, whatever you come up with in your head is the product. Because he does say, a composition can always not be realized, even not be written down. So maybe that's what he's saying. And once again, we're going deep with the syntax. But that's what we have to do, I guess, for sure. Reason philosophy is the counterpart of reception. Well, actually, you know what? Before we get into this 100%, let's just do the reception, documentation, and communication, because this might turn out to be as fruitful as the whole production thing. We might find some hidden stuff like that. So reception refers to whatever is recognized as being on the side of taking something from music on any level or reality. For example, we may hear a sound or let a machine decompose into its partials or make an analysis of a musical score by hand or supported by computer. But we may not perform a composition in the sense of a creative restatement. Whatever is on the side of a production of some new musical entity is understood as being on the productive side. I don't really know what that last sentence to do with reception, but I guess he does. Yeah, I think that one might be a little bit problematic too. Hold on one second. We may not perform a composition in the sense of a creative restatement. Anyone care to tackle that one for me or with me? Or preferably for me, because I don't think I get it.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to actually find the line in the text.
Page 5 is Ryan.
Okay.
1.1, very tough.
4, 5. Yeah. Okay. Can you say the line again that you were reading?
Sure, no problem.
Thanks.
Actually, I'll read the two before it. So reception refers to whatever is is recognized as being on the side of taking something from music on any level of reality. For example, we may hear a sound or let a machine decompose into its partials or make analysis of a musical score by hand or supported by a computer. Now, this is the one that I thought was kind of strange. But we may not perform a composition in the sense of a creative restatement.
I think what he means is like, I mean, you know, I think he's speaking strictly in the terms of reception, like saying in terms of the process of reception, we cannot do this. He's talking about like, you know, if you have the cello suites in front of you, like if you read through the cello suites, that like if I sit here and play you the first cello suite or whatever, like that's a creative restatement. Like it's a restatement because I'm reading the score, but it's creative because my fingers and the physics there and like, you know, and whatever interpretation. That's just kind of how I took it right off the bat.
Sure, I can see that, but I guess this really isn't, you know, that important. But my problem with that would be is, you know, reception is heavily involved in that. I mean, how would you perform the piece if you hadn't have had some sort of reception to it in the first place? You know, the reception is, to me, you know, all these things always kind of work simultaneously within an improvisation. And I find it funny, the one thing I do find funny about Mazzola being a category theorist, he is so into separation at all times. Just a quick side note, when you spoke here, a friend asked a question, and, you know, Mazzola's answer was, well, I can't answer that because you're asking me, you know, one part of the question deals with phenomenology and the other part deals with music. Well, so what? You know,
I agree with you.
Phenomenology, first half about music, but I don't know. To me, category theory, and maybe I read it wrong. If I read it wrong, I don't really care because I get something out of it. But to me, category theory kind of is the abolition of, or yeah, just the hybridization and the also too just the erasing of these type of boundaries, you know, and everything all works together. And I think in category theory, form and content do mirror each other a lot in the way that so many words are completely flipped on their head, and you know, you think you know what they mean, and they're also words that they mean something in a philosophical context, and they mean something different in a normal mathematic context. But in category theory, they also mean something radically different too. So. Yeah, I just think, you know, reception, it actually, it is involved, you know, in a creative restatement or any sort of, you know, analysis or production. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that last sentence has some. I think he's got to be trying really hard to, again, kind of parse these things out into these sections. That, you know, whatever is on the side of production of some new musical entity, aka a restatement or a reading through that isn't to the number. You know, when we see a note on the page, like unless, you know, we're of a certain like we're not going to read, like, you know, if that's an A flat, I'm not gonna play, like if I play a cello right now, there's next to no chance that I'm gonna play. Like, so I mean, there are people that do this now, which is amazing. But like, you know, playing A flat in terms of like the tempered shit. Like, I'm not going to play that. Frequency is going to be slightly off. There's going to be some things going on there. So maybe, you know, a new musical entity or a creative restatement. You know, a reading through is automatically a new thing. And that's production. Like he's saying that, like, you know, and that he's saying that, like, you know, unless it's, if a computer, if I input the notes into Finale and play the Bach cello suite, that's like, you know, that's a machinic, like, that's not production, I guess, in some way. Like, I don't know. I'm trying really hard to understand, because I also find it slightly problematic, and I don't necessarily think that this is how reception works.
Just one thing I just noticed. In the tetrahedron, he calls it perception, yet in every of the writing he says reception. And again, perception and reception are different things. Now, I know, you know, we're picking apart letters in different order at the beginning of a word, but I mean, these things do matter when we're really getting down to stuff like this. So I'm pretty sure Mazzola does his own translation. I know he speaks English very well, so I don't think it's a case of bad translation, but I mean, it does. I was talking to a friend earlier today, and I was kind of explaining what the book's about, and, he's looking at me like, I got 10 heads, why do you care about math? What the hell does that have to do with music? Blah, blah, blah. But the thing I said to him was, Mazzola really bastardizes terms in music theory, being a category theorist. That was actually something I wanted to say in my long-winded, nonsensical intro earlier. And, so I was like, I kind of think a lot of this talk is going to be us probably trying to go over these terms and trying to figure out what the hell this guy's trying to say. It's not like it's very thick. It's just the terms get confusing when we know there are other meanings, and we know it's a category theorist using it. So who really knows what's going for?
Yeah, I think we shouldn't get too hung up on there. There are other small inconsistencies here and there in the text that I've noticed, and it could probably use some more proofreading in another edition. In the future, or maybe an edit or two, and I don't know. But I think in order for us to forge ahead, we have to kind of come to some pragmatic understanding of his terminology, and then go with that. As long as we can agree on it amongst ourselves.
Everywhere else he said perception. It only says reception in this one spot.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm seeing that. So, well, no, actually, now that I'm turning the page, he's confusing them again. Oh, man. Well, I think this, whoever just said that, I think I agree to it. We don't need to 100% bog down the whole NHI, or however you say the word, of it all. As long as we kind of understand something that basically, I don't care if we understand him, as long as we are all understanding something together and getting something with, then it's not a lot. As long as we can work through it, and it is something that is it does seem to work for sure. And I guess let's go into documentation for a second and see how we think about this one. Documentation deals with whatever is related to bringing musical facts into more or less permanent science systems. Musical notation, database systems for musical objects, tradition of musical text, the question of how and on which media ethno-musical performances should be stored. All this is subject to music documentation. So just real quick, in a way, I guess documentation to him is sort of, in a way, the epistemic of music. He's talking about, the justification of it, or the part of documentation. It's not all of it, but I guess it seems to be part of it. I guess I wasn't really, nothing seems too problematic to me in there, but again, it is, I found these four concepts, it's kind of very general. Once he fleshes them out, a few pages later, I think it gets deeper, but the one thing I kept thinking was, are these, really the only four fundamental activities in music? And I couldn't think of anything else, really, per se, that was different, but I'm sure if we sat down for a while, we could. This is one man's theory, but anyone got anything to say about the documentation thing?
This is Avon. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I think it's good. Okay, so communication, which we are doing now. Communication is related to whatever happens when the three. This one's going to be problematic no matter what, but communication is related to whatever happens when the three preceding activities are put into relation with each other. Production leads to document. Documents are retrieved and interpreted by instrumentalists or musicologists. Live production of musical sounds by improvising musicians is preceded by other musicians of the band, then answered, and so on. Communication deals with the omnidirectional process in production, documentation, and reception. Okay, well we're dealing with a whole rhizomatic mess right there. But one thing I did want to say, again, Mazzola as a category theorist. I really find his views on improvisation to be very strange, and I think they many times illustrate extremely well what I call the prison of free improvisation. You know, where I saw Alex was saying something right when I came in on the side about, you know, when things become warm. Listen to free improv records. You know, pick an era, 2003, 2002, or geez, I can't even count now. 2003, 2005. Reading a math class, wow. Anyway, you know, just think of a 2-year era like that, and pick a label that put out, you know, some sort of improvisational music or a scene or something, and you're going to hear the same norms, you're going to hear the same tropes, these things are going to be reoccurring. So, you know, free improvisation we all know this. We all know this is a brand. It's a genre now, and it's just as much a thing as rock and roll, or it's just as rigid of a system. You know, now it also does always offer a promise or not a promise, but it does always offer this transcendent type thing that could be there, but it's often not accessed. Many times it is. But one thing specifically about this, when he says live production of musical sounds by improvising musicians, then answered, and so on. As a category theorist, I know one of the main things when I first started reading philosophy of math, the way I related to it was through improvisation. It was really the only way I could understand it. Things like, you know, trying to illustrate non-existing space, et cetera, et cetera. If that space existed, what would it be? Yeah, things like that. To me, improvisation is much more, it's really just like the Yone dilemma. You know, a true improvisation is every note that sounds, I guess every note that happens, I guess this is where product can be used in the mathematical sense, and maybe this is somewhat what he was going for. Every sound that is created is equally a product of, you know, not just the sound that preceded it, but the sound that preceded that one. And as well, you could say that the third sound already existed before the first one was even played, as well as the past ones, and so on and so on. There's no beginning, there's no end, and it's just this complete unfolding kind of Yone dilemma pinwheel type thing. And I just think for someone who's well studied in this, like Mazzola, he has a very, very rigid and musical theoretical view of things. And maybe it's the age thing, maybe it's his era, maybe it's the fact that he's a European playing jazz. I'm not sure, but it doesn't strike me as lazy, but it does strike me as somewhat strange. But
no, I hear what you're saying. If you don't mind me jumping in here, and I mean I think that Dr. Mazzola's work will strike many musicians as being on the quaint side, the way he talks about music, and at one point later, I think it's chapter 2, he talks about musicology as being insulated by the sort of devastating critical power of philosophy so far, and his book is a polemic attempt to basically initiate that subjection of musicology to philosophical critical thinking. But on the other side, musicology has its own kind of critical thinking, and I would say just music, what you're talking about. The actual practice of music, such as free improvisation, and we could bring it up in the context of noise, too, by circumscribing it with the act of performance, by naming it, by naming the piece 433, you have sort of created an antimony, created a paradox, which is bound to be rejected by many people. So I think so I think those are, again, for me, they're things that I have to put into brackets in order to actually go ahead with reading this work.
I agree.
Yeah, but I think it's worth it to. I think it's worth it to do that because this is a beginning and it's a major step, and the terminology being rather rigid is maybe better than it being flimsy, as in the case of the sort of ineffability theorists of musicology, which he criticizes later on. Because we can't gain traction with those. With this, we have something to talk about, to argue about, to build on in a way.
You're right. At least there's traction.
Yeah. So again, yeah. I actually think this is one of the weaker sections of the book. But you know.
Well, that being said, does anyone? I mean, I guess that kind of lays it out. The 4 parts. There's the whole thing with he says imagination and art is the counterpart of production. The whole Bacon analogy. So even in philosophy, the counterpart of perception. But actually, that goes in there with the German term Vernunft, which means perceive, receive, understand, and observe something, which is presented to your intellect, which may actually, I think I just actually also answered why perception and reception were being confused in his mind, because he was thinking the German term. And documentation history is verbally the same on our list. What we've not observed so far is the activity of communication. The genuine encyclopedic concern is communication of the global orbit of human knowledge. Without the driving motor, reason, imagination, and documentation are worthless abstracta. So 1.2 is where you get into the fundamental scientific domains and each of the tetrahedron. I think this is still somewhat of a weak section, but do you guys want to just go over it quick, or I don't know? Ivan, what do you seem to think? You think we should just jump over this one too, or should we do it quick?
No, I think we should rock through these preliminary definitions and this groundwork, and just sort of take the attitude of choosing to go with it, unless there's something that's like really objectionable, which would be great to pause and discuss. But yeah, I mean, that's my approach. I think we should just rock through this section.
I was thinking too. When I was a little bit more set up, and I thought I was going to have a computer at my work. I was planning on just being at first like, look, did anyone have any questions? Was anyone stuck anywhere? And if so, let's just dive in, iron that out, get it out of the way. Also approach it like Elron says in Dianetics, you can't move forward if you don't know the word. But
okay, no, I'm totally into it. I see Alex's note here. We should not gloss over the communication.
I guess he says, she wants to make clear what this all signifies, the whole the perception, production, and all of that. He says, for existence, for example, chemistry is dominated by physics, but not vice versa, which is completely true. Now, in turn, both are completely dominated by mathematics, and so are all natural sciences. They couldn't exist. And as he says, many hierarchical relations are problematic, blurred, or otherwise unclear, but the definition of basics of a particular discipline. And we have to often accept these general uncertainties. But proceeding full consciousness and provisional say that the art of the epistemological classification. So if one's looking to locate a specific research subject, in this case we're talking about music, within a hierarchy of disciplines, well, we're looking for a minimal set, a kind of basis of disciplines, which would be necessary to cover the subject. And according to him, these 4 sciences are semiotics, physics, mathematics, and psychology are the basis. And I don't necessarily disagree with him there. I do think the poetry itself is somewhat important to music, and I always see poetry, mathematics, and philosophy as forming a sort of triangle, but maybe that's something to dive into in later classes or at a different time, since he's not mentioning poetry anywhere here. But I do think poetry and literature itself are important, especially to music as well. But he picks these because none of these sciences are superfluous, and that they're all, there's always a point where there has at least involved somewhat, and they're never involved only via subdiscipline. They're directly involved. So it's not like they're selling your info to third parties or whatever. It's right there. So anyway, at this point, he's saying, we still got no idea what music's about, but we opened the box, we pulled a few things out. So he's going to give us his first provisional version, which he's saying music is a system of signs composed of complex forms, which may be represented by physical sound, and which initially mediate between mental and psychic content. And I actually think that is a very elegant way to describe music. I think he kind of nailed it with that one. Just as far as, he got to the methodology of it. He speaks, ontologically of it. It does say a lot about what music it can do or is supposed to do. What he says for this is, to deal with the system, we need semiotics. And to describe the system, that mathematics would be the adequate language to represent these forms, the physics, and getting to understand any psychic content, psychology would be the pre-testing science. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. He's saying, well, let's see. What are these critical points he wants to clarify? Number one, that he's ignoring the historic dimension of music, which is not completely, because semiotics is a strong competence in the diachronic study in science systems. Music history is prominently the history of a system of significant signs, which, much like diachronic linguistics, and here diachronic semiotics would be an adequate research field, whereas general history would be too generic, and it would also probably get into too many cross things that we don't need. It would cloud up the mirror or whatever. Musical forms are only mediated via a physical representation. They have a strong symbolic existence. And what I thought was great about this, I was expecting him to go to psychology, but, this book's mathematics, according to him, as it directly involves research aspects. Actually, does anyone, maybe Ivan or Jason, who's a bit more, or anyone else, if I'm not to offend anyone, but anyone who's a bit more mathematically inclined, want to expand on that one a little bit?
Anyone who's what inclined?
Anyone who's a bit more mathematically.
Oh, I'm not particularly mathematically inclined, I should say. I definitely respect the it's very interesting set theory and things like that, and the various uses of mathematical theory in critical theory and contemporary theory in general. But I wouldn't say that I'm good at it.
Okay.
Per se. So maybe somebody else?
No, I mean I don't claim that knowledge about mathematics, but I think, especially after Badiou, we have to take it along with ontology, along with our discussions of ontology. So I'm willing to go with that, but I'm a little hesitant about relationship between mathematics, semiotics, and physics. Basically,
what is hesitation?
Sorry?
What is hesitation?
I think it's this thing about physical sounds representing complex forms. So physical sounds themselves being signs So the physicality of it, and what we talked about earlier as being vibration, is subsumed under the semiotic function of it. And I think that...
That's a great point, man.
Yeah, for example, one possible objection might be that music history is a physical process, a physical and biological process.
That is a beautiful argument. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's something that I brought up in another little thing that I wrote during the New Rationalism seminar, and then Reza responded that would be to naturalize the subjective and multimodal functions of music, which is, yeah, which I wouldn't want to do. So, you know, I'm still thinking it over.
Well, hold on. Let's think about that for a second. Can you repeat that? To rationalize the subjective?
Or to naturalize.
Okay, to naturalize. Just repeat it for me, please.
To naturalize, I think he said, the subjective and multimodal functions of music. But at the same time, I think, you know, at the same time, I think there's resources from the New Rationalist philosophy of history, for example, that can be deployed here in you know, what is basically a musicology, what we're talking about. So I think that the relationship between music and music history is a lot stronger than people normally, you know, talk about it, and they really separate musicology and music history.
Yeah, it's the issue.
Sure.
Yeah,
Musicology is known as the academic, and music history is almost like pop culture crap.
yeah, exactly. So I think, I mean, there could be a natural. It's somewhere. It's naturalism.
I have a similar hesitant with you, Ivan, and I think that you like literally. I'm gonna steal that from you for years in the future. I have a feeling, but talking about the quote vibrational aspect is a great. My hesitance because of that subsummation, what that means towards. So the vibrational aspect is the most clear and profound way to talk about the mobility that Zach was trying to emphasize about like why things like this are, why looking at mathematics the way that Mazzola is, or the way that he's trying to look at mathematics, this whole idea again of like in the terminality of numbers doesn't mean what most people think the terminality of numbers means. That like this mobility in terms of meaning and numbers, the fact that it's commonly equated that like once you have a product perhaps, or the numbers, that the meaning of these numbers and how they function is onefold. That is a unified thing that doesn't move. And I mean, when you're talking about sonic space, and when you're talking about sound in general, you're dealing with something. This is why music ontology is so funny, because ontology, at least as like a pathogen in like humans in general, is like something that has like always leaned towards unification. I mean, even towards the people who like even the people that get lifted up onto pedestals of like fighting unification, somehow like people get to points where they're looking at what they're doing like, oh my god, like this is like multiplicity. Oh my god, like if you don't look close enough into what multiplicity means, like you're really just unifying. You're unifying the thing that the unknown that you were trying to promote in the first place, and putting it under the bubble of multiplicity without actually parsing that out. But so vibrational, right? Like what is a wave? Like what is a wave? This is something that moves. Even when we look at sound, it's a moving thing. Right? So in terms of the semiotic subsuming the vibrational, I mean that's always my fear with going into things like this, and not because I'm not interested. I wish I was better at mathematics so that I could work these things out, but that was also, as soon as we looked at that triangle, I felt the same feeling of like, there's but there's this like it's like you're chopping off a limb, or like chopping off like the medulla oblongata of like the whole fucking like being of sound. But you know, so I feel you nailed it. I think that's something to throughout the entire reading that me personally, like why I'm here, my personal reason for being here, that I'm going to be, you know, zooming in on and trying to be critical of without pushing things out of the way without really understanding what they're about.
Well, wasn't that why Marty brought up the kind of thirdism of semiotics? Was to, because it's not about subsuming. Actually, that kind of tripartite version of semiotics doesn't. It's not a polarity. I don't know. This is another point. I need to be better at math, but I think that opens things up too. Things that normally we find ourselves fixed in this kind of binary thinking, but with that kind of semiotic process, we actually start to generate multiple meanings, and they can exist simultaneously between, you know, maybe in the case of music, the perceiver, the sound, and the meaning.
Yeah. Also, too, basically what Alex was just saying, and Ivan was saying before. I mean. And I brought up earlier, you know, in ways it's like a cop-out because, yeah, everything is like, oh, sorry, got a text, probably made a weird sound. Anyway, there's a quote of Lamont, you know, it's really simple, and it's just, you know, when it comes to the human mechanism, the vibratory is probably the best way for us to experience knowledge production and absorb this knowledge without necessarily communicating in the typical sense. You know, for example, you're entering the sound body or whatever, and you know, what he would say is that there, you know, with his system, just as a nation, and all the, you know, sounds he's opening up, which, you know, are ratios and sounds that have never been heard by many people's ears, and that can cause a strange affect. You know, it does change perception a bit. So, you know, he would say that, you know, that is why music and why his system is so important, because it, you know, it isolates the vibration. You know, he's isolated it down to the exact frequencies he want to work with the ratios. You know, he knows which combinations work well. It's not like he's saying, you know, it's not some, you know, mystical magic kit that he's saying, you know, you put a 447 and 211 and, you know, some 9-digit prime in a room, and you're going to, you know, be able to levitate from Brooklyn to Queens in 4 minutes. So, you know, that's not what he's saying. But he is saying that, you know, the experience, the immersion in this vibration is probably the quickest way to lead to, you know, he uses the term a higher level of knowledge production. I don't necessarily like to use terms like higher and lower, but I would say that it can definitely lead to a much different level of knowledge production than you've been on before, or just a much stranger one. And I think Mazzola, he doesn't ignore the vibratory at all, but I think, you know, when Ivan said, well, why is the semiotics so important? And in a way, yeah, it is funny too. Mazzola is someone who, you know, you ever see him speak, definitely go talk to him, because he's one of those, you know, he loves to talk, and he's a very nice guy. He likes to go out and drink and all that. And, you know, very quickly, he oh my God, I'm bad. Semiotics. Yeah, I guess I'm bad with semiotics. I drew a complete blank where I was going with that one. Something about his, but yeah, I don't see. Oh, well, Mazzola. He loves to go on about how useless anything the French have done for theory is, which of course, not to use the public bathroom all over new rationalism, but they seem to all be loving to say that too, and everyone seems to love to say that nowadays. But 12 years ago, that it wasn't like that. 20 years ago, it wasn't like that, and I just don't think things should be discounted that easily. And not to say that semiotics is specifically a French study, no, not at all. However, they did pick up the field, and the way Mazzola rolls with it, I think, is influenced by what we would call the French post-structuralists, or whatever, people that he claims should be blown out of the water, basically, when you get talking to him. He'll say some rather colorful things about all of that. But, yeah, it's just, for someone who would claim, that level of whatever about, theory like that, where did the semiotics become so important, actually? I'm interested in this now.
Well, actually, I just wanted to just interject again. One thing is that I've kind of recently broadened my idea of what semiotics is, especially after I was made aware of work by Giuseppe Longo with like in the realm of sort of biosemiotics, and I kind of wonder if semiotics. Yeah, now I go back and forth with Mazzola's definition of semiotics and physical sound, because I think that actually vibration could be a kind of semiotics. There can be a semiotic, there can be a biology of inorganic matter. There could be a biology of a vibration. There could be a semiotic of vibration through biology, maybe something like that. I don't know.
I agree with that, actually, 100%. I had never heard the term biosemiotic until about a few months ago. I don't know if you guys know Brian Rogers, but he was having his quarterly reviews, and he wanted some help on something Feldman type thing, and he was like, just speaking of the biosemiotics, and I was like, oh, what the hell are you talking about, man? But
I think that goes back to
the term rather easily, and vibration is definitely biosemiotic.
Doesn't biosemiotics go back to like von Uexküll?
I should say that again.
Doesn't biosemiotics go back to von Uexküll?
Yeah.
I don't know. As far as I know, I thought it was like Longo and like Renee Tom and all that.
Can you type that in the side, Jason?
Yeah, his name is Jakob von Uexküll. He's cited very heavily by Deleuze.
I've never even heard of him.
Yeah, he has a theory of the Umwelt. The idea of the Umwelt is kind of like a life world in a way. But it's a very non-anthropocentric way of talking about it, where he's interested in like the Umwelt of a spider with a spider's web, and kind of like what is the life world, what is the animal life world like, and what are the semiotics of it. According to Wikipedia, his works established biosemiotics as a field of research, quote unquote, and he's also cited by Martin Heidegger, by Thomas Sebiak, and some other people. But definitely someone to check out. People who are like heavy Deleuzians, like myself, we love his work. So.
Good to know.
Yeah, I am completely ignorant of his work, and I love Deleuze, so I think I probably should check him out. He's important.
He's also a big influence on Giorgio Agamben. Agamben's book, The Open Man and Animal.
Oh, I was looking at that in the store today.
Okay, yeah.
I'd never seen that one before.
Yeah, it's a great book.
All right, so let's we're still kind of in the beginning here. Do people want to? All right, let's do the documentation thing real quick. Let's get to this, or just let's finish this last little part right here. See what we can do with it. Just a paragraph for a second. Physics has a prominent role in music, and this is not only with respect to sound production, classical acoustics, and physics with musical instruments, but also in computer science, which is concerned with data representation and processing in music. Be it on the generic level of software, or on the level of advanced digital sound synthesis and analysis. Hence, we do absorb computer science and sound engineering within physics, together with the mathematical formalisms in theoretical computer science. I mean, with that, it kind of strikes me as he knows a lot about physics, and that's which I wish I did too. But a lot of that kind of seems a bit, fluff to me. He could have expanded that much on all the other terms, and kind of just gave us a list of like 6 different things physics do in music, whereas everything else it was more of a concrete definition. He's a physicist, so I guess it's important to him. I don't know. The more I'm looking at this, the more I'm realizing, for an improviser, he really, he really thinks about composition all the time. Kind of crazy.
He's a European. Sorry.
So anyway, I guess this is next. It's extremely important to recognize the relative autonomy of these 4 research fields. That means that we never hope to hypothesize reductionism whatsoever. There's no interest to use psychological reality as a service of the neurophysiological depth structure. And this is not a pragmatic selection, there's also logical. That I would agree with, and he comes back to this in the next chapter. So, to complete it, he kind of tries to, make this tetrahedron thing, and it actually, the tetrahedron starts making sense a bit more when he adds it all in, I think. It's as far as the relations go, because psychology is definitely concerned with perception and communication. Semiotics would be concerned with mathematics and communication and psychology. Physics would be concerned with production, documentation, mathematics, and perception. So, the whole thing seems to work really well. I guess the example is, let's see, documentation is concerned with signs, their formal representation, and their physical storage technique. The psychological aspect is less substantial, where documentation is, quote-unquote, spanned by their respective vertices. We do, however, not regret this elegant configuration as a matched tetrahedron. I think either Jason or Ivan brought that up earlier about how it's not a matched tetrahedron or some mystical magic chord or something like that, just because it has to do with numbers and things like that. We're not, doing numerology here.
Mm-hmm.
Not yet. Anyway, the visualization merely serves as a concise and relatively well-positioned synopsis of the overall situation, where the question, what is music about to be initiated? Well, that was the name of this chapter, but he waited till chapter 2 to initiate the answer, topography. So I found this chapter to be a bit more introduction. Wow, I'm getting tired now. A bit more interesting. The whole layers of reality thing. Although that was a bit commonsensical too. The Molino's communication stream. The phoenopoiesis, stasis, and all that. If you guys want to dive into this, we could do it now. It's a bit thicker, or I don't know if you guys would want to save it for next week. I'm going to be honest. I got 20 minutes on the computer left, and I don't know if I want to spend another $25 for an hour.
Is that how much it is per hour?
Yeah, I spent $50 already.
Oh my god.
It can't go. It's 2015.
I
amazing. Oh my god, that's awesome.
I did have the thought. One, you know, if you know, we probably shouldn't go too longer than 2 hours, or too much longer than 2 hours anyway. But I did have the thought that because you're coming into the Hangout and you're receiving the Hangout audio of everybody else just through the cell phone, you could technically do it just through the cell phone, couldn't you?
You know, you're 100% right.
I mean,
well, no, actually,
unless
I'm
you're using
my audio through the computer.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were probably doing. Okay.
Yeah, so I can hear you on the phone, but that's about it.
Okay. I'm pretty sure. Oh, I see. Right. So you're getting like high quality audio from the computer. Okay. Well,
right. I have my headphones plugged in.
I would suggest we just my suggestion, you know, is just because we did end up starting at about 7. I would suggest we stop before you have to renew.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. 9:05, I think, is when I shut off.
Okay.
That's cool. So the next chapter, it's the topography of music, which is, you know, rather similar. We know Jesus, I am getting tired. Similar. No, not similar, simple. Because topography always, you know, just deals with you know, topology, we're in space, we're looking down on crap. You know, topography, we're cruising around the street, man. You know, we're looking at buildings, we're, you know, checking out people walking by, whatever. You know, topography is a bit more simple. So, let me read a little summary. Chapter deals with an ontological orientation in the subject of music. It was already considered in Chapter 1 that music is communication, it has meaning, and mediates on the physical level between its mental and psychological level. Such an orientation is topographic in nature since it offers a number of ontological dimensions and coordinates to profile musicological results and helps in avoiding misplaced word argument. The topography involves 3 mutually independent dimensions: communication, reality, and semiosis. The local nature of this orientation scheme is discussed. Well, to me, I guess communication and semiosis, they're independent, but they're intertwined, and everything's intertwined with reality. The 3 things don't seem that mutually independent to me, but you know, that's what he's working with. So, I guess that's So let's see. Whoever is doing a formal, logical, mathematical, or computational methods in music doesn't have to be an expert in music philosophy, and you know that's totally true. Often, you know, some of the most like often when people, you know, from the math world think I want to do something musically, you know, they throw an algorithm into you know, some sort of program and, you know, do their thing, and they think it's great. And it, you know, can often be just, you know, the most bloated crap ever, or it could be sublime many times. Be great, you know. I think Auditor, their last 3 records and EPs, taking their own records, are all great examples of that. Whereas I think their releases for about 7 years before were a great example of going overboard with just using algorithms, logarithms, generativity, things like that. And also, too, you know, also complexity in music, to me, is never a sign of greatness at all. It can be, of course. It can also be a sign of the worst. You know, I mean, I'm looking at Alex's comment on the side, and I'm agreeing, right? You know, like, so the best improvisers I've ever played with, all, you know, they want to talk about drinking, how they paint houses during the day. You know, maybe they'll talk about a book with you or something, but usually, you know, you bring up art and things like that, and sciences, you know, they're not really, you know, they're generally pretty inept in everything, but, you know, the second you get down with them, you know, they're interdimensional travelers. That's sort of how I look at improvisation. I know, maybe sound like L. Ron Hubbard or whatever, you guys, but, you know, it is, it's a sacred thing, and it's rather intense practice and theory, improvisation. So, Yeah, Alex's comment. I don't know. It's funny. It's true. It reminds me of many of the best improvisers I know. But let's pick up this Mazzola for a second. I just got a message saying I have 8 minutes and 58 seconds. Let's skip over a little bit of this and just get into reality communication and semiosis. So, these are the 3 layers of reality that he wants to deal with in music. He wants to, and what he's saying here is that he wants to deal with all these on their own and not with each other. Again, a category theorist, making sure to put up walls between everything, but I mean, it happens. So he says, he wants to deal with semiosis without being concerned with its level of reality, and vice versa. That's the advantage here. So, dealing with semiosis when it doesn't affect communication. Dealing with, just like, he said, chemistry is subservient to physics, but not vice versa. It's a similar thing. Actually, it's not that similar. I made a bad analogy. So let's see. Whether the ontological question is settled by this procedure is me. All right. Well, he's going to answer it here. He says. So let's begin with a closer definition or closer just exploration of these things. So where's the reality? The definition of reality involves physical, psychological, and mental layers. One thing about this that I have a bit of trouble with, or just a bit of confusion. Does anyone here have a specific? What is the difference between the psychological and the mental? Does anyone have any comments towards that? That's something I was interested in what other people would say.
Your mic, I think your mic is off.
The psychological deals with the unconscious and the subconscious, so...
Great point. I couldn't go that far. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
I think the mental is like constructs like what he's, like mathematics itself is.
Sure. Especially with him saying, he wants to keep everything separate. I didn't even think psychological is it's a separate discipline, whereas mental, it could be mathematics, it could be science entering the picture, anything like that. So, okay, thank you guys, thank you. You're learning. I'm not the sharp.
I think in psychology, the mental is an obstacle to the psychological.
Ooh.
As far as I know,
Hey, could you repeat that? I dropped my headphones.
Oh, I just said that in psychological terms, the mental is an obstacle to the psychological.
Yeah, I agree. Guys, I'm getting my 2-minute message. Do you want to wrap this up and we'll pick up next Saturday, or?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Probably.
And then, of course, we'll do some more reading, but we'll pick up from here next time.
Yeah, let's just agree on a place to go up to on the Facebook list.
Okay, perfect. I don't have the table of contents.
It's okay.
We'll figure it out within the next few days.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about poiesis.
Actually, so am I. Yeah, that was my favorite part of the whole reading.
Okay.
Hope we can discuss that
next time.
Well, let's make a point to discuss that next time, because that was
cool.
part of the whole reading.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks a lot, Zach.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry
Zach.
about being missing for the first day.
Thanks a lot, Zach.
Thanks for everything, Zach.
Thank you, guys.
All right, I'm going to take this the discussion on the sidebar here, the group chat, and I'm going to put that in the Facebook group.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Didn't have to open all the tabs that you sent me. I could have just waited for that.
What is Terminus, Harry? Is that like a hardcore band or something?
That's from Walking Dead. That's from
Terminus.
not this season, but the last season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's the characters. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So much
Okay.
fun.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.
Later.